When you start thinking about, as a small business, a small startup, leverage channels that you have easy access to. Such an easy rabbit hole to go down trying to pick a name. This is why I had to leverage friends to pick a name, because you end up going to rabbit hole and then you just halt. You're like, I can't start anything. A website, the name of your Instagram profile, like literally little things like that.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Spring Studio Spotlight podcast. Today we're joined by Jel, the founder of Northern Neighbor Agency, an independent marketing studio based in Canada. From building a marketing business after a year of travel to leveraging branding strategies for her clients, Jel's story is one of creativity, resilience, and growth. So whether you're an entrepreneur looking to rebrand or a founder needing marketing advice, you won't want to miss this conversation.
When I started the business, I started on my own initially, and the name obviously being the Northern Neighbor to the US. So we're a team of 4. Me and my business partner had to step away at some point because we understand what we want to achieve and we've got that dialed in, but we've maybe done the top look, the high level thinking of where we want to be and briefed in our team because we have to step away from it. It's so much easier to do it for other people, but then when it comes to your own business, it's like your little baby. You keep finessing it, and then we just realize we have to step away a little bit, and then we'll come back obviously and make sure that it aligns with who we are as well. But it's hard. It's very hard.
Jel, welcome to the Spring Studio Spotlight podcast. How are you?
Good, and thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah,
first time
absolutely.
doing a podcast, so
nice, first time.
Let's do it. Yeah, first time.
Oh, that's exciting. Maybe if you don't mind introducing yourself and what you're up to over at Northern Neighbor, and then we can dive in.
Easy. My name's Jel, and I run an independent marketing studio up in Pemberton, BC, up north. Called Northern Neighbor Agency. So what we do is focus on everything from establishing brand identities and strategies all the way to pretty much reaching your target audience and speaking to them directly. So from far and in between, everything really.
Nice. I love the name. And selfishly, as a typical American, I'm immediately thinking we've always considered Canada our northern neighbor. Where did the name come from?
Honestly, I actually had another name in mind. I can't remember it, and someone was asking me the other day about this. And I went to register it, and it was gone. So I spent about a week tormenting some friends. And when you come to it, you're like, when you have to make a decision, you sort of just halted before you can make the next step. And I was like, you know what, I need to make a name. And obviously being in Canada, as you can tell, I'm not Canadian. I am Canadian technically, but my accent definitely isn't. So I was like, okay, we're north, start playing with that. And it actually worked out really well. And we are in the process of doing a little bit of a rebrand for the business. And it's really stemmed from Northern Neighbor and then building a neighborhood, and sort of the way we built and work with our clients. It's just like that core neighborly feel. So it's really stemmed from that too. But yeah, literally a week of tormenting friends and sending a bunch of names, and then this is the one that I landed on.
Going through the 200 names and nothing feeling like it's it, but then in the 11th hour when you're forced to make that decision, sometimes it just happens.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm assuming even with Spring Studio, I'd actually like to know how you guys came up with the name as well.
Yeah.
What stemmed that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You're tossing the ball back in my court. I like it. Yeah, Spring Studio, it was sort of similar, I think. We were going through a bunch of names, getting some feedback from friends and family. Mony and I kind of kept kicking around different things, different ideas. And there was something about growth that I think we were both really attracted to. And being, I don't know, I was obsessing over plants at the time and house plants. And I'm like, springtime, that's usually when things grow, right? That's when you have your plants kind of coming back to life after they've been dormant over the winter. So there was something about this idea of growth and spring and kind of a reimagining or regrowth that we were attracted to, especially in the beginning, because we were coming in as this product studio where we were helping founders design and build their products, so their digital products and SaaS and apps and stuff like that. So we were thinking about like, okay, well, how do we convey that without being so like kind of on the nose? And we just came up with this idea of springtime and growth, and paired it with studio,
Nice.
and it made sense. It made
I
sense for
love
us at the
it.
time, and now we're like, okay, I guess this stuck.
And that's the great thing. Like you can build on it. Like when I started the business, I started on my own initially, and the name obviously derived, obviously being the northern neighbor to the US, and then also being in Canada. And how does that evolve? And then I took on a business partner, and we sat down and like established our core values and everything that we want to, you know, establish the brand as well. So it's like, what's the mission? What's the purpose? And everything kept stemming back to neighbor and the neighborhood. And I feel like for you, it's like that spring and like growing and the growth, which is quite cool. You can really build that story behind it, which is awesome.
Totally. I love
Yeah.
that. And then on the flip side, we have folks come to us with their businesses, and I usually ask like, how did you guys come up with the name? And they're like, I don't know. I just needed a name. I'm like, that's awesome too. That's awesome too.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm not going to mess around with, spending 2 weeks on a name. I'm just going to get going. And then maybe down the line we can change. So I see both sides of the coin. I personally love the intentionality behind it, and like being super intentional with our design work that we do, and with the naming, and with like all the touch points and all that. Like I'm kind of obsessive about that. And then but on the other hand, it's like, plenty of
Just pick a name. Yeah.
successful companies that are out there. Is just like,
Oh,
just pick a name,
100%.
just
Oh,
go for
it's
it.
such an easy rabbit hole to go down trying to pick a name. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is why I had to leverage friends to pick a name, because you end up going a rabbit hole and then you just halt. Like, you're like, I can't start anything. A website, the name of your Instagram profile, like literally little things like that. And yeah, it's just pick a name sometimes.
Paralyzed by choice. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
So I'd love to maybe take a step back, and we talked about like the earliest stages of Northern Neighbor and like picking the name, but like tell me about your career before starting your own thing. Have you always been entrepreneurial? Is this like kind of a new thing for you? I know you've been in
Yes.
marketing for a long time.
Yeah, so I started off actually back in Melbourne, is where I started my career. I was working at a media agency and focusing on the content side of things and how we line that up with planning and buying and building, a story behind the brand. It was sort of a small arm, like a creative arm of the media agency, really. And then I moved into planning. So this is where, that building a target audience and establishing core channels that we want to work with, and how we build that, leverage that brand story that's been established and actually get people to see it. So that's how I started my career. And then I decided to quit everything, come over to Canada for 6 months, as some like to say, 8 years later. But then I moved, yeah, classic. And then I moved into product marketing. Yeah. So I worked for a ski resort, and I focused on supporting all the retail and rental stores that we have available here. And from that, it literally changed a bit of my perspective. So in Melbourne, it was very much planning and buying traditional media, looking at TV, radio, obviously digital display was in there and everything like that. But then we moved here, it was very localized and it was very different, different audience, working with small businesses. And it was quite interesting seeing how the shift was there. And then after that, I went on a year travel, and that's where the freelancing started, really. Decided to come back to Canada, and I started working with a lot of local businesses and freelancing and focusing on developing strategies and channel plans for different brands and helping them sort of, get their story and their product in front of the right eyeballs. And it was always in the back of my mind to start a business, start a small agency, but I never knew when the right time was, as most people probably can relate to that, and how, really. I think a lot of the time people don't talk about all the admin components that go into running a business, and I think that took a hold for a little bit and just understanding that. And in all honesty, I broke my arm
Oh, no.
a couple of years ago, riding bikes, and I realized I needed support. So from that, I hired someone to support me, and it started growing. And I'm like, okay, this is working. I can actually, build a little team. And then from there, we started taking on more clients. And I'm like, okay, there's something there. Like, let's, people want to work with us. We, have a story that we want to tell, and they want to work with us because of our style and how we work together. And then that's how Northern Neighbor Agency was born, really. From there, it literally took breaking an arm to get that started. And about a year ago, I took on a business partner. It's someone that I've been working with for the last 5 or so years as one of my freelancers as well. And we built Northern Neighbor Agency.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Wow. Yeah. There's so many threads that I want to pull on there. It totally off the business side. Like, we'll get back to the business side, but how was traveling for a year? What was that like?
It was great, honestly. I've always wanted to do it. I went down South America, went exploring for, it was 13 months. Right at the end of it, COVID started happening and the pandemic. I remember being in Argentina, and there was cases in Brazil. And as I went to visit my family, I'm from Melbourne originally, the world shut down. So obviously being traveling for a year, wasn't sure how I was going to get back to Canada. So I sort of hunkered down, and that's when I tapped into obviously some online platforms to start freelancing, realizing I'm like, this is the way I want to go about it. I definitely want to make it back to Canada. But honestly, the year experience was great. You meet a lot of different people. You meet people from all parts of the world. Culturally, it was amazing. And then just figuring it out for a year. And I think budgeting is a big one that usually gets brought up, budgeting to sustain a year of backpacking, but it was good.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. What an amazing way to kind of bridge that gap between your previous career working for folks and doing traditional career path and starting your own thing. It's kind of like this romantic idea of okay, I'm going to leave everything. I'm just going to quit. I'm going to peace out for a year and go travel. And then at the end of that, you know what? I'm going to start my own thing. Was there a realization during the travel where you're like, you know what, let me just see what I can do freelancing, and then that kind of evolved into Northern Neighbor? Or was your intention always to go back to the more traditional career?
When I left initially, I was like, I feel like I live in a small town up here in BC, and, the job opportunities are a little bit different, I'd say. So my whole goal was always, create something for yourself and what you want, if that makes sense. I think we're pretty fortunate with how remote work has evolved over the last couple of years, and how probably businesses work with clients as well has changed quite a bit. It's not so focused on where you are. You can find the talent that you want to work with elsewhere. Fortunately, we've been pretty lucky to work with mostly Canadian companies and in the States, so it's pretty close at hand. But I think when I left initially, I knew I wanted to do something my own. What that looked like, I wasn't 100% sure until I got back to Canada. And then from there, I was working with a couple of clients, and I just think I needed that extra little push to start the business. When you start thinking about the admin and everything else that comes with it, payroll, and that, the break in the arm literally sped that up quite quickly.
Yeah. I bet it kind of forced your hand, forced your arm into
literally. Yeah.
literally. Wow. So now that you have some support at Northern Neighbor, are you guys focused on, you mentioned going through a slight rebrand. Does a rebrand come with kind of a refocus, reimagining of the company, or is this more so just purely refining our messaging, refining our visuals? What is the rebrand looking like?
We understand our core values and who we want to work with. And I think bringing that visually to life in terms of how we communicate that to our clients and what that looks like. Definitely wanting to focus more on storytelling, and how we'd love to, create brand identities, and then bring that to life on each channel, and that they want to, depending on their marketing spend and what they want to achieve. But helping people really speak to their target audience is the big thing. So the rebrand's really going to focus on how we tell that story so that we can attract the right people as well from our side.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense. Is this current rebrand kind of the the one major kind of pivot, or I shouldn't even say pivot, but like one major turning point that you're seeing in the company, or have you guys kind of gone through a couple turning points over the last 4 years?
I feel like this is definitely one of the bigger ones where we're really refining it. So it's not going to be a full refresh, if that makes sense. But as any business that's starting out, you realize how quickly things move and how quickly things grow. And, we were hoping, the last rebrand was when I took on the business partner, and we're like, okay, we're getting to a point now that, this is the look and feel. But then obviously me and her have grown together quite a bit. And we're like, okay, we need that brand to represent who we are and what we do. And it's really refined that in the last year. Like, we've made it really clear. And I think a big part of this is having the time to sit back, reflect on what we've done so far, because she has worked with me for the last couple of years. But then also sitting down and looking where we want to get to and planning ahead. I think a lot of the time, and we've been speaking to a lot of businesses lately, is it's that time of year where you sit down and reflect on what you've done, and then what's your next goal for the next year, 3 years, 5 years, where do you see yourself? And that's the big part that we're looking at. It's like, where do we see ourselves in 5 years? Ideally, we don't want to be going through a rebrand, obviously, every year, but I think this is something that we can evolve, and this is what's going to get us to that goal. And that's why we're really going through this process right now, just to give everything a little bit of a refresh, but really hone down on that messaging that's going to speak to that individual that we want to engage with, or that business, really. Yeah.
Right, right. It almost sounds like, just based on what I know about you and the company, it almost sounds like this is something that you all already have a lot of experience with, working with other companies. Have you found it even more difficult to do it internally rather than
Oh my God.
working
It's
with a
so
client?
hard to
It's
do
the
it.
worst, right?
We literally had this discussion last week. So we're a team of four. Me and my business partner had to step away at some point. We're like, because we understand what we want to achieve and we've got that dialed in, but we've maybe done the top look, like, the high level thinking of where we want to be, and briefed in our team, because we have to step away from it for a little bit,
Yes.
because it's so much easier to do it for other people. But then when it
So
comes to
much
your own
easier.
business, it's like your little baby. Like, you just like, you
Absolutely.
keep finessing it, and then at some point, yeah, we just realize we have to step away a little bit, and then we'll come back, obviously, and make sure that it aligns with who we are as well. But it's hard. It's
I
very
feel like
hard.
I feel like almost every business can probably relate. It's like from choosing the name to going through a refresh or a rebranding to like really dialing in your positioning. All of that is so, in my view at least, and I don't know if you feel the same, but all of that is so difficult because of the endless possibilities. It's just like paralyzed by choice. Like, we have so many ideas. I think that's part of being in the sort of creative services industry, is like, you've seen so much, you've done so much, you have so many ideas, so many directions that we can go in. It's like, how do you choose? How do you choose the path? How do you choose the direction? It's always so difficult.
It's funny because when we talk to clients, obviously, we help them navigate it, and it all stems down to like understanding your mission and your values and who you are, and then who do you want to speak to as well. And then obviously, pulling in characteristics that they like and that, aligns with their target audience. There's so many things there. But when it comes to your own, like, if I'm doing my own, I'm just like, oh, I like this, I like that. And then it's a lot harder.
And then it's just this
Yeah.
Frankenstein piece of something that is just, okay, well, maybe we need to take a step back and do this again. So I would love to dive into some of what you all are focusing on over there, and take what you all are focusing on over there and apply it to the startups, the founders, the small business owners who are going through an identity crisis, so to speak, or challenge kind of like reaching that core audience. What advice do you have to like smaller brands or startups that are looking to elevate their marketing and looking to reach that core audience, but might be on a limited budget? Like, what are some of those low hanging fruit items that you would recommend them focus on?
I was speaking to you about this the other day, but we held a workshop recently, and it's like how to scale it back, like go back to basics. Honestly, it's like going back to basics, and it's like, okay, what is your unique selling point? How do you describe that? And describe it in a couple of short sentences, aka your elevator pitch. Be able to describe what you do and how it stands apart from your competitors. Two, I would say, is 100% knowing who you're speaking to. What I'm noticing a lot, just from some experience, especially when people come and reach out to us, is like they're comparing themselves to the competitors, which is great. Look at your competitors, get to know what they're doing, especially if you're in a small market. You want to know what they're doing and how you can cut through. Literally do a SWOT analysis of your competitors. What's their strengths? What's their weaknesses? What opportunities do you identify? And then, the key threats that you see there. This will help you see the bigger picture, especially when you start looking at quite a few different competitors, how you can cut through. And then going back to the target audience and, why people look at competitors, and the point that I was going to try get there, and I loop around sometimes, is often enough they think they need to be doing the same thing. However, and then they start replicating that. It's like, oh, I want to grow as an agency, I want to grow my following, and I'm following other marketing agencies and doing exactly what they do. That is not going to speak to my target audience. So who are your target audience? How do you speak to them directly? And keep it simple as well. So the messaging, you want to make sure that it stays simple, that it's easy to convey. Don't use all the jargon that you need to, especially I find when people are starting out, and if it's a specialized field, they'll pull in all the, the keywords, the fancy, from me, it's the marketing jargon that everyone hears about, and it's making sure you scale it back for the people that you're talking to. But yeah, so I feel like I'm going to go in a few circles here, but definitely keep it simple. Know who you're talking to, understand your market and who's there. And then from there, develop key messages that you can leverage moving forward and how you reach out to them. When you start thinking about, as a small business, a small startup, leverage channels that you have easy access to. So word of mouth is one. Leverage your network that you have on LinkedIn to reach out, reach out to individuals that you worked with in the past to grow your business, depending on what field it is. I'm trying to keep it quite general, obviously, because depending who's listening in. And then leverage channels that you can grow organically as well. You don't have to be posting 100 times on Instagram to reach that target audience that might be on LinkedIn, and you can, leverage your market there. So it's just being a bit more strategic with your time, because obviously as a startup business, you're probably either building a product, building services, you're maybe growing a team that includes a lot of admin. So you have already a lot on your plate. So just be a bit smart with the message that you create, keep it simple, and then find the channels that work for you, and go from there.
That's amazing. That's great. I'd love to jump into the channels part. I think there's this idea of like the spray and pray method where you're just like, let me just put as much content out there on all of the channels and hope something happens. It sounds like you're maybe recommending now pick and choose the channels that your target audience is hanging out around and create valuable content specifically for them, while always keeping them in mind, creating content that they'll find useful or helpful or valuable, and not necessarily worrying about being on every single channel, every single platform, trying to reach every single person.
Oh, 100%, because you're going to stretch yourself too thin. I think what happens a lot when you're starting out a business, and a lot of the clients that I've worked with in the past, is you get excited, which is great. Like, write those ideas down, get stoked. And then everyone, what I notice is all of a sudden we have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X. I was about to say Twitter, but X. We need to do Google ads, everything. But is that being smart with, one, your time and the effort that you're going to put in? And then two, is that where your audience is hanging out? And then also, depending on your product, what channels are going to drive awareness and what channel are going to be useful when someone's actually looking for a product or a service that you provide. So that's another layer to put in them. So you want to be very thoughtful about what channels you're picking if you want to drive a general awareness amongst your target audience. And you don't have to be posting constantly. Like, those are very nitty gritty things. It's be very mindful of the message that you're creating and how you create it. And then the second layer is, okay, so is someone searching for my services on Instagram, or is someone searching for my services locally on Google or within the local community board? Things like that to consider. Because that's when you can be a bit more mindful when you push different type of messages. It's like, what's your point of difference? A bit more of a strong call to action. So definitely don't. A spray and pray approach is Obviously, if you have the time and the resources, go for it.
Yeah.
Have a plan in mind. But if you don't, which a lot of, startups, businesses, small businesses don't, just be a bit more mindful of what you select and how you go about your messaging there.
Nice, nice. I love that. That's great. And I would imagine that, like you said, can be applied to so many different businesses and so many different industries and categories. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, we're not just talking about the mom and pop donut shop down the road. We were talking about the mom and pop donut shop down the road and Spring Studio and any other agencies. And it's just the focus and making sure you're speaking directly to your target audience on the platforms that they're going to hang out on, whether that is building brand awareness or where they're searching for an actual solution to their problem.
Oh, 100%. And I think it's something that it's worth doing with if you're looking at planning and your objectives, it's definitely part of that stage, like, understanding what you want to achieve and what your objectives are, honestly, for the next year and 3 years and 5 years. It's like, do you want to build brand awareness? Are you a brand new business? Do you have a bit more resources and time that you can drive a lot more brand awareness, and then start looking at driving that retention and the customer loyalty, which is another piece of the puzzle that I won't even open right now. But understanding where you want to be, really, and that will stem down into how you market yourself, really, and your business.
I love that. I don't like tossing the word trends out there, but being somebody that is plugged in to the marketing world and understanding, what's working, what's not working, a lot has changed in the past few years, especially with AI. I would imagine even more is going to change in the next few years. What are you all excited about in marketing, just in general, marketing in general over the next couple of years?
Definitely a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah. It's kind of a
I think,
passe cliche topic at the moment, but it's,
yeah, like, it's funny because, you have people coming up to you like, oh, your job's, going to be redundant in a couple of years, or, it's so exciting. Honestly, from my side, I'm pretty stoked about it. Like, it's providing tools and resources, not just for us, but for everyone, really. It's knowing how to use those tools is vital. So from my perspective, I'm pretty excited with where it's going and how we can leverage, AI technology, and how we can leverage certain tools to help not just automate tasks, but, improve areas of your business, and provide a bit more time to focus on the key things. The one thing I am noticing a lot is people leveraging an AI to, automate some task, let's say copywriting, which is great. And it helps obviously in certain areas, but people are losing the sense of personality behind that text as well. So I think that's something that I want people to be cautious of. So it's like, use it as a tool and educate that tool, but make sure there's that human element that comes into it as well. That would be my thoughts on it initially. Just noticing how obviously we consume a lot of media, not just from a personal, but from a business perspective. So noticing that trend is quite prominent.
Yeah, 100%. I love the line about making sure there's a human element still involved.
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
I think
100%.
that's incredibly important. Like we're not there yet. Like we're not totally replaced yet. I mean, who knows what
Yeah.
10 years,
I hope
10
not.
years it might look a lot different. Who knows? But right now it's like, yeah, when you can inject some of that personality, some of that like you said, the human element, I think help take the blueprint that maybe you use ChatGPT to create and take it to that next level that people will actually resonate with.
Yeah. And that's definitely something I'm noticing a lot more with small businesses and probably startups that are leveraging it a little bit more. Is it sort of becomes a little bit same sometimes with the copy and everything, like that you leverage, maybe even sometimes creative. So it's just being conscious of it, that you're educating a tool, but you don't want it to always go back to your, brand identity. What's your key messages, how you want to speak, what's your tone, what's the values that you want to portray, like, share with your community, really.
Mm-hmm. I have had to instruct ChatGPT to never use the word delve because it would always use the word delve. I have never said that word before personally. I have never read that word like pre ChatGPT. Can't think of a single time when I read a post and I'm like, oh, let's delve into the world of marketing. It's like,
Yeah. Or
when?
embrace.
What?
I've noticed embrace a lot. Yeah.
Embrace, yes.
Hmm.
Embrace, delve, the world of, yeah, few other things.
It's quite funny. There are
Yeah,
definitely keywords, and you notice it. Once you notice it, you see who's using it a lot as well.
totally, totally. And we're
Yeah.
probably hypersensitive to it. Like we see it
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot and we're plugged in, like we kind of, know what to look for almost. And I would imagine as we continue down this road, more and more people will also be, hypersensitive to it as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me what's next for Northern Neighbor. I know you mentioned the refresh, the rebrand. Do you guys have anything that you're really looking forward to in 2025? Did it? I was about to say
Yeah.
2024 and had to stop
I
myself.
know.
Next year, 2025. Do you have anything on the roadmap that you're super excited about?
Yeah. We definitely want to focus on, from our side, is definitely working with larger brands on focusing on their identity and, whether it's a rebrand or honing in, especially on businesses that have grown rapidly, and then helping them establish their voice and who they are and what they do. We really like working with brands that when we work in that element and actually seeing it to fruition. So helping them build out campaigns that will really drive their objectives, whether that's a new concept or a new idea. But that's the focus area from our side. From as a business initially, it has revolved a lot around, small brand identities and paid marketing, predominantly because that's my background, as well as social media management. But brand identity and storytelling and building out campaigns is definitely going to be our focus for 2025, and seeing how we can grow that, which will be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Really looking forward to watching your progress over there. Uh, just kind of watching from the sidelines, you all are doing something really awesome and really amazing. So I'm excited to see what's next.
Thank you.
If somebody wants to get in touch with you all, where should we
Yeah.
send them? I'm
Oh,
guessing northernneighbor.com.
yes, northernneighboragency.com, or you can follow us on Instagram, Northern Neighbor Agency, or pop me an email, hello@northernneighbor.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Jill, this has been so much fun. I feel like we could go basically like round two, like really diving into either marketing or, I mean, honestly, I could talk about AI for 2 hours, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a can of worms,
we'll save
100%.
everybody that.
No,
So
easy.
you're welcome back anytime. This has been amazing. I'm happy to have played I guess a small role in your first ever podcast. This is
Yeah,
exciting.
thank you.
Yeah, that's
Hopefully not
awesome.
the last.
Yeah,
And thanks for
definitely.
having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.